they have a swimming pool or a pool table or something else, you know what? You ought to think about starting to dig a pool in your backyard. You want the kids to come to you instead of going to another home. Figure out how you can be the fun house for them to come to. And just know that you always, have popcorn or ice cream or something there that the kids absolutely love to come and be with your family. Anyway, children can be a good influence or a bad influence, and you want your kids to choose friends that are good influences. And you need to say to them, you're responsible for choosing good friends, you say to your kids, because I can only trust you as far as I can trust your friends. So if your friends are making decisions that are not positive, that are making decisions that Dad and me, or that we would not approve of, then I can only trust you as much as I can trust those friends. So that means if you want to be trusted, either be the thermostat and change the moral temperature, or you're going to have to choose new friends. So the kids have a responsibility in that area. And then, of course, there's the media influence on your children. And the first time you probably, let's see, if you're my age, the first time you probably saw a movie that had a reference to immoral sexual behavior, it probably shocked the socks off of you. But the next time you saw this couple that just met each other 30 minutes ago and suddenly are jumping into bed, the next time you see it, it doesn't hit you quite so strongly. It's the same way with words. The words can come over television that are absolutely awful swear words, especially if you're watching an R-rated movie. And the first time you hear it, you're absolutely shocked. You just can't believe that they would make a movie with those words in it. But if you watch it again, or the second time you hear it, you're just a little bit more relaxed about it. The next time you're just a little bit more relaxed about it. And that's the devil's way to put you into a situation where it's like putting the frogs into a pot of water that's cold. They're just fine for a while. But as you heat up that water, they won't even try to get out. They kind of get used to it until they boil to death. And that's basically, morally, what our media system is trying to do to your family. So stop it immediately. Make the rules and have the kids help you make rules. So if they see something even that comes up on Facebook or something that isn't appropriate, they immediately know, don't look at it, because everything you look at, everything you hear goes into this marvelous, marvelous brain. And I just want to share with you a little about this brain that I didn't share before, but it's amazing. The human brain consists of about 1 billion neurons. Each neuron forms about 1,000 connections to other neurons, amounting to more than 1 trillion connections. If each neuron could only help store a single memory, running out of space would be a problem. You might have only a few gigabytes of storage space, similar to the space in an iPod or a USB flash drive. Yet, neurons combine so that each one helps with many memories at a time, exponentially increasing the brain's memory storage capacity to something closer to around 2.5 petabytes or 1 million gigabytes. I don't even know what these things are. I mean, that's a lot, you guys. For comparison, if your brain works like a digital video recorder in a television, 2.5 petabytes would be enough to hold 3 million hours of television shows. You would have to leave the TV running continuously for more than 300 years to use up all that storage. Folks, when God created our brains, He said, I'm going to create them for eternity. You know what you're going to take to heaven? Is your character, basically your brains. And what are you filling it with today? All that stuff, all that junk. You know, He's not going to do a brain transplant when you go to heaven. He may clean us up a little, praise the Lord. He may clean us up a little, but basically we're going to heaven with the brains we're developing. And how do we have a healthy brain? You're not going to like all of this. We get enough sleep. If you don't get enough sleep, you may drive like a totally drunk person. That's how dangerous you are if you don't get enough sleep. Other things that affect our brains. We know sugar affects them. We know that unhealthy food. We know that soda, all those things. We know we have healthier brains and healthier bodies if we're vegan. I mean, it's there in the research. We live longer even if we just follow those health habits. But so often we compromise what we do and we begin little by little destroying our brains, which clogs us in terms of making good moral decisions. Interesting, isn't it? So we want to be a good influence for our kids. All right, let's spend a little bit of time. Let's see, where are we? Are we at 5 o'clock already? Give me a few more minutes, okay? Here we go. I want to talk about information. What kind of information are we going to give our children? We need to be pre-teaching them. If we knew that there was going to be a sinkhole in the middle of the street next to you, and they hadn't yet put up any barriers, and your kid usually, as he had beginning driving, went down that street, would you tell him there's a sinkhole ahead? Absolutely you would. Well, let me tell you, if the devil got you during those teenage years or whenever, and you did something you're not very proud of, you're not proud of at all, the devil knows, because kids, he knows the fathers and the moms pass down their genes to the kids. He knows that it's very likely that your kids will make the very same mistake that you made at approximately the same time. And because he knows this, if you made a bad mistake, let's say you had sex before marriage, let's say you were 16, your kid's nearing 16, do you think you ought to warn him that the devil's going to put every single demon that he can get a hold of on your kid's case, because he knows that your kid has an inherited weakness to fall for the same thing that the parent fell for at about 16 years of age? That's heavy, isn't it? We don't need to be painting pictures. We just need to say simply, I made a mistake. And the consequences were something that I didn't want to happen to you. I had sex before I should have. You don't say the person's name, you don't put where it happened, you don't do anything. You don't ever want to create in another person's head a picture of you sinning, because it will come up when they're relating to you, especially with a wife or with a husband. Suddenly that picture will come up. You do not want to paint those kinds of pictures, but you need to warn them that you are putting on extra prayer power, both your wife and you, or the family, for that kid to get safely through that 16 to 18-year-old period, because that's when it hit for you. And you don't want to pass on the sins of your generation on to the next generation. Let's be honest. Let's let them know. We don't have to tell all the dirty stuff, but basically warn them that the devil's out for them. Okay, here we go. So pre-teaching is important. Before something happens, let them know if there are dangers ahead. Tell them parables and stories. Now, this is one that I love to tell kids, and I'm going to take time right now to tell it to you so you can share it with your kids. But once upon a time, there was a little skylark who loved to eat worms. And every day he went out in the garden with his brothers and sisters and found worms to eat. And one day, the little skylark went out to the corner of the garden, and he saw a little man calling, 2 worms for a skylark feather. Wow, 2 worms for a skylark feather? You mean, he said, I don't have to dig for my worms? You will just give me 2 worms if I pull out a skylark feather? Yes, said the little man. Why, he just pulled out a feather, gave it to the little man, and had 2 juicy worms. And he did it the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And his dad and mom heard about it, and they said, oh, that's not a good decision. You will need those feathers. Don't trade any feathers for the worms of the world. But the kid didn't listen, and he kept trading feathers, and pretty soon he got a little cold, and he said, hey, when are we going to fly south? And the dad said, maybe in a couple weeks, because it is getting a little chilly. And don't go back, Dad said, to where that little man is in the corner of the garden and trade any more feathers for worms. It's not a good idea. You'll need those feathers. But he didn't listen to his dad. He didn't listen to his mom. And away he went to trade away feathers for worms. A couple weeks later, Dad flew into the air, and he said, come on, everybody, Grandma, Grandpa, aunts, uncles, it's time to fly south. And brothers and sisters flew into the air. Everybody flew into the air, and Junior Skylark tried, and he tried, but he didn't have enough feathers to get skyborne. And I say to the kids, when they're making decisions that aren't healthy, tell me, what is the most important thing that you want in your future? If it is to go to heaven, then tell me, how does disco dancing, X-rated, R-rated movies, how does pornography, how does alcohol, how do these things help you grow closer to the Lord Jesus Christ, who made heaven possible? We can all learn something from a parable. And that parable, that picture in our mind, can help us in the choices that we make, and it can help us in the choices our kids make. All right, let's just skip down to the very end. And I'm going to talk about internal control. And just say we can do everything perfect in terms of being good influences on our children. We can do everything perfect in terms of the information that the children are exposed to. We can homeschool them all the time. We can make sure that we're the teacher in Sabbath school so they get the best possible instruction. We can make sure that they have good friends that they interact with. But folks, if the kids aren't able to have the next in factor, it will all be for naught. The third in factor is internal control. They have to be able to have that internal control, the ability to make wise decisions, or everything goes away. So I say, help your children make good decisions. Learn what good decisions are about. Learn how to teach your children to make decisions based upon principles and not just, you see, there's a scale in terms of making moral decisions. Most kids make moral decisions on whether they get rewarded or punished. And if they do something wrong and they never get a punishment or a lesson from it, they will make those moral decisions. In fact, if you tell the children this story that a little girl found a wallet and she gave it to her daddy and because it had money in it, and her daddy spanked her, or the little boy who found a wallet full of money and took the money and got himself an ice cream cone, which kid was the best kid? Which kid did the right thing? Your young children will go by reward or punishment. And they will say that the boy who found the wallet that had money in it and got an ice cream cone was the best kid. Because they can't wrap their minds around somebody finding a wallet, giving it to his dad, and the dad spanked him. So that's the first level that children make moral decisions on. The second one was a nice thing to do. And of course, all this changes depending upon who you know. And some, if it was a nice thing to do, the kids think it's the right thing to do. If it's if they are said that they are nice kids but they're doing bad things, that doesn't make any sense to the kids. If it was a nice thing to do, that's what you do. Now the next one is based upon an authority figure. Most Seventh-day Adventists fall in this level in terms of making moral decisions. Oh, have you ever heard? Ellen White said this. Oh, somebody in our church said this. And they go by an authority. But listen, when kids get to high school and college, their moral authorities become their teachers and their professors, and they can be totally off. But they become the authority that the kid believes is right. So we need to teach our kids that it's principles, Bible principles especially, that they need to be making moral decisions for them. They should know those 10 commandments, that you should not lie, you should not steal, you should not murder. And our countries are doing away with those. They're legislating against them. In the United States, they've already legislated against murder, or for murder. It's okay to kill unborn babies. That's just fine. It's state law, so that's okay. We can go away with that commandment. And now they're messing with your heads in terms of the 6th commandment, 7th commandment, adultery commandment, in terms of gay marriages. And what about the 4th commandment? When is that going to come up in our legislatures? And our kids are confused, but between the authority figure, the government, and what the Bible says. So you've got to let them know, make decisions based upon principle, which means they need to know their Bible. You need to know their Bible. You need to know where to find those beautiful Bible texts. I would just like to leave you with a thought that your children can grow up to make amazing choices. They can do things that you never thought were possible if you encourage them to use their brains to the full capacity. Ellen White once wrote, if you want to be a legislator and make laws for the country, and if you want to be a researcher and help to do research in highest levels of information. And then she went on to say, there's nothing wrong with those things. But then she gave a principle that you need to hold on to. There's nothing wrong with those high ideals of what you can do, because she says every child should move forward and make the most of who he is, because if he does, he can, number one, do a noble work for humanity and honor God. So those are the two principles to hold on to, and encourage your kids to go for the moon in terms of the skills and abilities that God has given them. And with a good moral character, that is the highest valued thing that a kid can take from your home into society. God bless you. And if you have any questions and you want to stay by for the next half an hour, I'll be very happy to answer those questions. I don't know if there's one or two right now before we break up. Nobody wants to be on television, right? Whatever. Hey, I'll be back again next Friday night. Oh my goodness. Oh, I think I'm going to be talking about the 10 traits of a strong, healthy family. You will love this. Don't miss next Friday night. I already told you at church time, I will be talking about the father factor and why fathers are so important to the development of the family. And then we have 2 more coming up. Do you have that? What are they? What are the 2 more coming up? All right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is fun. Putting the snap, crackle, and pop back into your marriage. That's what's coming up next Saturday, Sabbath afternoon, and also the precious present. I'm going to be talking about the importance of time and how do you have a 15-point piece of time, which is really high quality time. So those are some of the things that are coming up. Remember to look at your little brochure, and we will see you Sunday. I guess that's the next one coming up, right? Yeah, success strategies for families. We'll be doing that, and then all of these other topics. God bless. Thank you for being such a great audience. Now, y'all can go, but if